Hey all, in this video I'll show you exactly how I sketched this portrait of my grandpa for watercolor so that the painting stage is way easier. So let's get started. I start by making a 1 by 1 inch grid, or you can do it a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch grid, on my paper, and then you put a grid on your original picture as well and try to match up those lines that you see. I imported my picture into Procreate, and then you go to Canvas, Drawing Guide, and then Edit Drawing Guide, and then this is where you can add the lines cleanly and quickly. Adjust the slider at the top to change the colors, and then there's options on the bottom to change the opacity, thickness, grid size, and other kind of settings. You don't really have to worry about making this accurate in terms of 1 by 1 inch, but just make it however big you want it to look on your paper. Keep it in mind that each square will equal 1 inch on your actual paper. Now, back to the drawing. From here, you just match up where you see the lines on the original to the ones in your drawing / future painting. This is especially helpful if you struggle with accuracy. Next, I'm going to share about a couple of topics and techniques related to drawing. The connect the dots method. You can also do a connect the dots method where you just put one dot where you see the line starting, let's say where the corner of the mouth starts on the grid line square. Then you make another dot on the other side of the square where the mouth ends. And then you just connect those two dots with a line. It just helps to simplify things more. A thing about tracing. For those of you who are just starting out, who just want to practice on the coloring stage and watercolor part of it, I'm sure it's tempting to try and trace, and for real, I'm not against it too much, but you won't be training your eyes as much if you do it that way, which ultimately won't help you draw better in the end. Plus, tracing can sometimes be fuzzy if your watercolor paper is thick, so doing a grid method is still the most accurate way to get a sketch in if you ask me. P.S. Please make sure your reference picture is not fuzzy either, if you can help it. Just saying, because if you're doing commissions, sometimes people might ask you to draw someone and give you a really small reference picture, but if that's all they have, then so be it. Drawing by sight. You could also skip the grid method altogether and just draw by sight, but I find that takes me too long and I get OCD about the accuracy later. I can be very picky when it comes to making things look exactly like the source, so instead I use the grid method to help me alleviate some of that anxiety. Freehand drawing is still a great way to train your eyes if you really want to do that. Freehand drawing is still nice, but using the grid method will help ensure that your drawings are as accurate as possible. Cartoony lines. Even when you're done with your sketch, it might seem a little cartoony because of the outline, but just trust that where you put your pencil lines will work out in the end with realism once you color it all in. About dark paint. Lastly, about the sketching stage, if you're going to be painting with rather dark colors, it might help to sketch in your pencil lines a little bit darker than usual, or even use a thin ink pen. Because of those dark colors, it might cover up your lines, and you won't know where to put the other colors or layers after that. It happened to me in this painting stage later, which you'll see in my upcoming video. Alright, so the very last stage is now erasing all of those little grid lines that you made before. I heard that it's better to use a regular eraser as opposed to a kneaded eraser, which I had been using for years, so I thought I'd try it out in this painting, but really, I didn't see any difference. It's supposed to be better because there's lots of oils from your hands stored in the kneaded eraser, which can kind of repel the watercolor paint. But again, I didn't really notice any kind of absorbency differences. But using a smaller eraser is better anyway because you can get around your drawing lines as opposed to the grid lines easier. If you want to still use a kneaded eraser, that's fine, just make sure it's really clean. And that's about all I have to say about the sketching process. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in the comments. And stay tuned for part 2 where we complete the whole watercolor painting process. Alright, hope you have a good day. Goodbye.